Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Hello Velocity podcast. I'm so glad you're joining us today, and today we're going to be continuing our conversation from last week's episode about habits. And now we're going to look at it from the other side, and that is bad habits and how to break up with those bad habits. And bad habits can be those things and actions that we take, whether intentionally or not intentionally. So that could be something very automatic that we're not even thinking about anymore, or something we're choosing to do regularly that is somehow making us worse off than if we were to not do it. Or it's somehow making us further from our goals than what we would like to be doing. Bad habits come up all the time with my clients, both personally and professionally. Some examples include social media, watching TV, staying up late, or hitting the snooze button in the morning, or eating junk food, or drinking alcohol. And then on the work side, we have office gossip, waiting until last minute to get something done, or checking work emails at all hours of the day, even when you're off the clock, in a way that's actually hurting your mental health. So the important piece about bad habits that I really want you to remember and that I'm really going to emphasize today is that we need to understand what that immediate gratification is that we're getting from that bad habit that has us essentially addicted to it. It almost means that we're on autopilot, we're doing it because something in it feels good in the moment, but we need to remember that it's usually making us worse off over the long term. So we need to start thinking about both sides, both the immediate short term, but then also the long term when it comes to these bad habits. And I want you to think about too, by breaking up with these bad habits, it's essentially you investing in your future self to be better off. It's making small changes today, maybe a few sacrifices here and there in the current present self in order to invest in your future self to be better off. So the first place I always start with clients who are working on breaking up with bad habits is first identifying your trigger. Essentially, what is causing this bad habit? And the trigger usually comes down to some sort of emotion or action that is triggering you to do this bad habit. I also like to think about this as, what is that juice that has you addicted? What is it that feels really good in the moment when you're doing this bad habit? So it could be an emotion that is triggering it. For example, eating junk food. For a lot of people, myself included, it could be something that, oh, I'm in a really great mood. I'm really excited. I'm going to have some junk food as a little treat for myself, or even a little alcohol as a celebration. Or sometimes when I'm feeling sad or down, I go to junk food as comfort because in that moment, it almost feels like it's filling that hole or gap in my emotions. And it gives me that dopamine hit or something that's really feel good in the moment to distract me from those emotions. Another common example I see of a bad habit of staying up late is that a lot of times when I see that happening, it's really that the person is maybe dreading what's happening the next day. Maybe they're really unhappy in their work situation, they have a lot of anxiety, or even just some resistance to their work situation. So they're almost staying up late as a act of rebellion to get as much of their personal time as possible and avoiding going to work the next day. Or it feels like you're putting it off in the moment. So it's that emotional trigger that has you staying up late. So those are a few examples of the emotional triggers. Now, on the other side, some action-based triggers that might be triggering your bad habits could be something as simple as when you're with certain people, you tend to have certain habits, right? In certain social environments, maybe these friends could be almost bad influences for you, smoking, drinking, things like that. That's super common. Or maybe even in a work setting, there are certain people who tend to gossip a lot. So whenever you're in the office kitchen with them, it inevitably turns into gossip at some point. Or thinking about even, laying in bed at night tends to be a trigger for getting on your phone and being on social media or TikTok specifically. I see that a lot. So what are those specific actions throughout your day that are a common thread with those specific bad habits that you want to be working on? Once you have a better understanding for the triggers, both emotionally or action-based for your bad habits, the next step is to start thinking about that short and long-term benefit for breaking up with the habit. So we first are understanding the motivation of why we're doing it, but now we need to understand why we want to change it. And I really want you to think about both the short and long term, especially when it comes to bad habits, because they can be so hard to break up with. So you need that extra piece of motivation when you're in that moment and you are about to grab your phone to scroll or you're about to grab that junk food. You want to think about both your current self and your future self. So, current self, sure, it might feel good for a few seconds to do that one bad habit or to do that one thing. But then ask yourself, okay, in about an hour, how am I going to feel? Okay, in about a month, how am I going to feel? In several months, is that going to impact me? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And a lot of times it's more when it's a continual habit, of course, right? Having that junk food one time might not be a big deal when it comes to gaining weight, but if you're doing it very consistently, that's going to add up over time. So it helps you to check in with yourself in the moment before you're about to do that action, that bad habit, to think about, okay, is it really worth what I'm getting in the now to move myself further from my future goals or to hold back my future self from what it is that I really want? And most of the time, the answer is no, it's not worth it. And that's a good gut check in the moment to ask yourself, to check in with yourself. And that's why it's so important also to know our triggers so that we can catch ourselves when we're in that environment or when we're having that emotion and our knee jerk reaction is to do the bad habit. We are starting to look out for those triggers more. And then when we do come across that trigger, we then stop and ask ourselves, is it really worth it? Do I really need this right now? Am I gaining anything from it really? Or is it just something that feels good for 30 seconds and isn't worth it over the long run? So once we know our triggers for our bad habits, once we can check in with ourselves about our short and long-term motivations of why we want to be shifting this habit over the long term, the next piece is really to create a plan to support yourself to make these changes over time. Because again, this can be really difficult to do, and it's not something you can just snap your finger and say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore, and you'll perfectly never do it again. It's not that simple. I wish it was, but it's really not. So we need to have some support in place. We need to have some plans, some techniques and tips to help you continue to practice this over the long term, and especially to get started immediately, which will be the hardest part, is the first few times to try to shift this behavior. So some specific techniques that I like when it comes to breaking up with bad habits is, first of all, just make the habit as hard as possible to do. A lot of times we do these habits because they're convenient, because we're just used to doing it, and it's almost become like muscle memory for us. So how can we move things in our environment? How can we make it hard to grab our phone? Maybe we're putting it in the other room when we go to sleep at night. Even when you're working, maybe it's somewhere further out from just being able to reach it within arm's distance. Maybe if it's junk food, maybe you're not buying it at all. It's not in the house. It's not conveniently there. Or you're hiding it behind other things, the healthy things in front. Even with watching TV, maybe you're moving the TV remote somewhere that is out of your arm's reach from the couch. So you have to really think about and take further action in order to grab it. What are those little physical things that can help just change your automatic behavior, change that muscle memory, and give you time to think about, oh, is this something I really want to do? Or is it just an automatic behavior that I'm doing and I'm just going through the motions? We want to buy ourselves as much time as possible between our trigger and response. So again, the trigger being the emotional or action-based trigger that has you doing the bad habit. So we are looking to increase the time between those to buy you some time to think about, is this what I really want to be doing? Or do I want to be doing something else? And with that, that's the next technique, is replacing our bad habits with something better off. Some of these bad habits, they are just more of a muscle memory. So if it's something as simple as scrolling on your phone, is there a different app that could be more beneficial for you, more productive, more learning based, more engaging than just consuming content? Or it's more specific content that doesn't make you feel anxious or nervous like social media might? Think about moving the apps on your phone to be, hiding the one that is social media or whichever is causing you stress and anxiety, and instead replace it with apps that actually make you feel good. For me, something I've done to reduce my phone scrolling in general is that I now have a adult coloring book that I leave by the couch. I've found my trigger for scrolling on my phone is when I'm watching TV at night. Instead of automatically getting on my phone. Now I have a coloring book right next to where I normally sit and makes it super easy to just grab that instead and replacing one habit with another one. My adult coloring book honestly is very calming for me, makes me feel really good, and I've noticed less anxiety when it comes to less scrolling. Another technique to try to reduce your bad habits is actually tracking your progress. And this can be whatever technique works best for you. There's a million different things you could try, whether it's something as simple as having some sort of piece of paper where you're keeping track. It could be on a calendar, it could be habit journals, and there's plenty of habit-based tracking apps out there that can help you automate it a little bit more. Sometimes I just use the Notes app in my iPhone to just keep track of things. And we want to do something like that just to even make it more visual for ourselves, which can be really motivating for people to see your progress over time. And another thing to think about is we're not going to be perfect right away. So we don't want to, again, going back to our last conversation about habits, it may not be realistic to go from 0 to 100 or 100 to 0 in this case of doing it every day to not doing it at all. So think about, if you break your streak, that's totally okay. But what I've learned from different habit books, especially Atomic Habits, they emphasize this too, is try not to break it more than 2 days in a row. Because after that 2 days, it becomes that slippery slope where it's hard to get back to where you were. So it's okay. Give yourself some grace if you miss it one day or one time. It'll be okay, but try not to miss it more than twice because then you might just fall off the wagon and it might be harder to get started again. And another technique for breaking up with your habits can be rewarding yourself when you are hitting different milestones or when it's been a week, it's been a month, it's been 90 days without this habit, whatever that looks like for you, whatever would feel good for you. Reward yourself along the way with something tangible, with something specific that you're planning for in advance. Honestly, sometimes we need that carrot to dangle in front of us to motivate us in the short term as well. We can do all the mindset work to know that we need to be breaking up with this habit or that we know it's better for us in the long term. But if you have something more immediate, more soon to see those results, especially if it's something like you're trying to eat healthier so there's less junk food around, it might take us a while to see the results over the long term of maybe losing that weight. So what are some rewards you can treat yourself to along the way? Obviously, you don't want to reward yourself with more of the bad habit. That wouldn't make sense. But what's something else that feels really good to you and won't cause you to lose momentum on it? Different rewards I've done for myself and with my clients could be something as simple as treating yourself to a nice bubble bath, going to your favorite coffee shop, buying yourself a new outfit, going to a concert, meeting up with friends, something like that. And if it's with other people, definitely share with them, hey, I really want to reward myself. I want to celebrate the progress I've made on this. It's been several months or it's been a full month of not doing this thing and it feels really good. And I want to celebrate with someone, right? They would love to celebrate with you too. And it's that extra level of accountability. On the other hand, if you're someone who doesn't get motivated by rewards, you could do the opposite and have consequences if you're not staying consistent on breaking up with this bad habit. This might be for the people who have tried again and again to break up with this bad habit and it's just not sticking. There's just something getting in their way. Then come up with some sort of consequence if you're not able to do it, if you're not able to break this habit or go 14 days without this habit, then what will happen? What's something that would motivate you enough because you don't want to be doing the consequence? This, you definitely need an accountability buddy that you told this consequence to make sure that you will actually go through on it. And it could be as little or as extreme as you need it to be. I've heard people try things like, oh, they have to dye their hair a certain color if they keep doing this thing because they know it's so bad for them. And they really don't want to dye their hair a certain color, which I think is hilarious as a motivator. Or it could be something as simple as you have to give your accountability buddy $50 if you don't do the thing. Money tends to motivate people, so that can be an easy one to try as well. But just think about what would motivate you in the sense of something you really don't want to have to do. So we have a ton of examples, tips, and techniques for you to try when it comes to breaking up with bad habits. And a quick summary of those high-level steps include: first, you have to understand what the triggers are that are causing the bad habit. Then I want you to identify both your short and long-term motivations for breaking up with the habit. And then you need to create a plan that will support you both in the short term and long term to get there. So let's go through a specific example that I see all the time in my clients, and that is social media and how to be on social media less. First, uncovering what it is that is triggering you to get on social media. This one, again, for me, a lot of times was that at the end of the day, I'm maybe watching TV and I want to maybe catch up on news. I want to see what's going on with friends. And I pull out my phone and I start scrolling. And then I find myself on there probably too long. And I just don't feel good. So for me, my trigger has been at night when I'm watching TV, or sometimes I find it if I'm really stuck thinking about a problem I'm trying to solve at work, or feeling a bit overwhelmed where I don't know what to do next. And I see that in my clients a lot too, is that we almost use it as a distraction tool when there's these different emotions, maybe in our day job, or we're feeling overwhelmed personally. Then we go to social media as that like respite for ourselves of some sort of, oh, this will feel better in the moment. I get that dopamine hit. It feels better than feeling overwhelmed or anxious. So I'm going to try to replace it with this feeling from social media. But spoiler alert, it doesn't always work like that. Then you're just delaying the inevitable emotions, and sometimes you're making your emotions feel worse. And then you're honestly just wasting time for the most part. So it's not very helpful. Then we need to think about that short and long-term motivation for breaking up with the habit or reducing the habit in general. I know social media is one of those. Again, it can be hard for people to go entirely without it or to quit it entirely. So maybe it's, again, thinking about those time limits. Maybe you're just trying to be on it less. So short-term motivations, like the things I mentioned already, less anxiety in the moment. We want to be more present with our family. Maybe we want to be up and moving more. We want to be outside more. We want to be on our phone less. We want less screen time, less strain on our eyes. There's a ton of different motivations in the moment or breaking up with social media. And then over the long term, the benefits that you'll see are getting so much more time back in your days, in your weeks, in your months. You'll probably find yourself with more even-keeled emotions or less stress, anxiety from being on social media less, and then maybe even feeling more clear-headed, clear-minded. You might be more creative because you're not consuming other people's ideas and thoughts as much, and you might find yourself coming up with more ideas yourself. So a ton of specific ideas here for techniques to break up with social media. That can include, obviously, there's a lot of the obvious ones that people try a lot are setting different app limits on your phone, deleting the apps entirely, or even moving your phone away from you when it comes to whatever action or event is triggering it. Just try not to have your phone near you when you know you're going to be in that environment. Definitely turning off notifications on social media. I recommend this for everyone because honestly, you don't need to know immediately the moment someone likes or comments on a post. That's just stressful. Honestly, I haven't had social media notifications on my phone in probably 6-7 years, and I feel way better without that. Some newer tips that I use and I've heard other people use that you may not have heard of yet is that there are different apps and features on certain phones where you can actually turn your phone into black and white so that when you do look at the app, it's less addicting to your brain. So that's kind of a cool one to try. You can also move the apps around on your phone. If you do need to keep it on your phone, you can try moving it off the home screen. So again, we have that muscle memory of where the app is on your phone, and sometimes our fingers just immediately go to it. So honestly, try moving it every 2 months or so, or maybe more often, and just to get your body out of that habit. I even have a folder where I put social media apps on in my phone, and I call that folder something specific that will be another trigger to try to stop me from opening it. Right now, the folder is called Caution, and I try to change it regularly as something, just another way to stop me and make me think about, do I really need to open this app or is it just an automatic? And again, try to think about moving the more productive or helpful apps that maybe you do want to be on more in the place of where those social media apps typically are, as just another way to replace those apps with something else that you would like to be doing. Okay, again, a ton of techniques for you to try today when it comes to breaking up with habits. And I really wanted to deep dive into the social media habit because so many of my clients bring it up. and are working on it, and I know I'm working on it all the time as well, and I hope you have a ton of new ideas to start practicing and have some new mindsets that you're thinking about when it comes to your bad habits. That's it for today. We'll see you in the next episode.